Ever get that feeling? You're scrolling through reviews, maybe for like a fitness app or something, and everything seems great, you know? Then bam, out of nowhere, you hit this 1-star rant that just kind of, I don't know, throws the whole vibe off.
Totally.
It's like suddenly you're questioning everything.
Yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, love it.
You sent over this research paper, and the title alone, Effect of Toxic Review Content on Overall Product Sentiment. Sounds kind of intense, right?
It does sound a little jargony, right?
Yeah.
But it really gets at something I think we've all experienced, which is how just a few really negative comments can totally color our perception of something.
Exactly. And this paper doesn't just talk about it, they actually studied it.
They did.
They dove into app reviews, and not just whether people like the app or not, but like how those opinions were expressed. Was it, chill or...
Right, like the tone.
The tone.
Exactly. They looked at toxicity.
Ooh, toxicity.
Yeah, so imagine like a rudeness radar for online comments. That's essentially what they were working with.
Okay, hold on, back up. A rudeness radar. I need to hear more about this.
Right. So they use this tool called the Perspective API. It's developed by Google, and it analyzes text. So they used it to analyze thousands of these app reviews and give each one a toxicity score.
Okay, so it's not just about if someone disliked an app, but how they chose to express that dislike.
Precisely. They were interested in the difference between a review that simply says, this app didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Versus one that's like, full of insults and personal attacks and just general aggression.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we all have different tolerances for negativity, right?
Totally.
So how did they even begin to measure something as subjective as toxicity?
That's a great question. So the Perspective API looks at the language used in the review. It analyzes factors like the specific words that are chosen, the tone of the writing, and even things like the structure of the sentences.
Wow.
And then it takes all that and it assigns a score between 0 and 1. And the higher the score, the more toxic it's deemed to be. Think of it like a sliding scale of digital politeness.
A digital politeness scale. I love it. And they use this on like real reviews, right? Please tell me they didn't just stick to like one category of app.
Oh, they cast a wide net. They specifically looked at reviews for apps in 3 different sectors. They looked at subscription services, health and wellness apps, and travel apps.
Okay, so they're covering a good range of needs and wants there. Were they trying to see if, for instance, like a scathing review of a meditation app hits us differently than a bad review on a flight booking app? Because honestly, the stakes feel different.
You're spot on. They were really interested in whether the impact of a toxic review changes depending on, I guess, how important that app is to our daily lives.
That's fascinating. So they've got their toxicity scores, they've got all their different app categories. What did they do with all that data? Did they just ask people on the street how those reviews made them feel?
Not quite. They got a bit more scientific than that.
Okay.
They actually built statistical models to analyze all this information. Think of it like they're searching for those aha moments buried in a mountain of data.
Okay, so they're looking for patterns, for trends, not just individual opinions. They're trying to figure out if there's a real connection between this toxicity and how we perceive these products.
Exactly. And remember how you were just talking about how a few negative comments can sometimes overshadow a bunch of positive ones?
Yeah, totally.
Well, they wanted to see if that feeling, that gut reaction, actually held up under scrutiny.
Oh, you're telling me they found a way to measure that feeling. This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. Tell me more.
All right. Well, are you ready for some of those aha moments? Because I've got some interesting findings to share.
Hit me with your best shot. Did those toxic comments actually hold any weight? Or do we, as savvy consumers, just ignore the negativity?
Well, some of the findings definitely confirmed what we might already, instinctively feel.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for example, they found that apps with higher overall ratings, not surprisingly, tended to have more positive sentiment in the reviews.
Makes sense. People love to rave about things they're head over heels for.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. They found that even if an app had a stellar, 5-star average, the presence of those toxic comments still negatively impacted the overall product sentiment.
Wait, really? So even if most people are, singing an app's praises, those toxic comments still manage to drag down the overall impression? We don't just tune them out.
It seems like we do. It's like those toxic comments have this sneaky way of getting in there, in our subconscious and just sticking around. Even if we're consciously trying to focus on all the positive feedback, they just seem to carry more weight than their, numerical rating would suggest.
That's wild. It's like, What is it? One bad apple spoils the whole bunch, even if there are only like a couple.
Perfect analogy. And remember how we were talking about those different app categories? Well, here's where it gets even more intriguing. That impact of toxicity. It wasn't the same across the board. Remember how you were saying, like, you wondered if a bad review hits differently depending on what kind of app it is?
Okay, now you're really speaking my language. I've been on the edge of my seat waiting to hear about this. Give me all the details. What did they find?
Well, they discovered that the negative impact of those toxic comments was actually weaker for the kind of essential apps, like the health and wellness ones, compared to, say, leisure or entertainment apps.
So you're telling me that, like, a nasty comment is less likely to deter me from downloading, say, a meditation app compared to, like, a new game? That's wild. Why is that?
So it seems that our brains, our oh-so-complex brains, they work a bit differently when we perceive something as being, essential to our well-being. It's almost as if our need for a solution, in this case, that health or wellness app, kind of outweighs the negativity. We're less likely to be deterred by a few harsh words if we believe that app can help us address a really pressing need.
That makes so much sense. Like, if I'm feeling anxious and I hear that this specific meditation app is, like, a lifesaver, a few grumpy comments from people who didn't like the background music aren't going to stop me. But a scathing review on a game that I'm, like, just kind of casually interested in, yeah, I'd probably pass. My, entertainment needs aren't exactly life or death.
Precisely. It's like our own needs, our own priorities, they create this fascinating context for how we actually interpret and weigh online reviews. We're not like robots blindly following the star ratings. We're feeling humans who filter this information based on what matters most to us.
This is such a good reminder that there's so much more to those star ratings than meets the eye. It's not just about some, like, objective measure of quality. It's about how our own brains are decoding and weighing all those opinions. This is blowing my mind.
It really highlights that subjective nature of online reviews, doesn't it? Like, what might be a total deal breaker for one person could be easily dismissed by another, based on their individual needs, their perspectives. It's a fascinating interplay of, like, psychology and technology.
Absolutely. But, okay, where does that leave us as consumers constantly bombarded with these online reviews? How do we navigate this, like, complex landscape of opinions and actually make informed decisions without, getting swayed by a few bad apples?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And luckily, this research offers some, I think, pretty insightful clues. The key takeaway here is that awareness is power.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about how we can become more, like, aware consumers. Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about how we can become more, like, aware consumers.
I think it starts with, like, really understanding that we're not just these passive recipients of information, right?
Right, yeah.
It's not like we just download a review into our brains like a computer program or something. We actively process it. We filter it through our own experiences, our own biases, all that good stuff.
So you're saying we need to be more conscious of those filters, like those personal lenses we're using to interpret these reviews.
Exactly. Like, next time you're reading through reviews, just, take a second, take a breath and ask yourself, like, what's actually driving my reaction here?
Yeah.
Like, are you put off by this negative comment because it actually raises a concern that's relevant to you?
Yeah.
Or are you maybe, letting a single voice, maybe one that doesn't even resonate with your needs, overshadow a whole chorus of positive experiences?
That's such a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the negativity, especially, like, when it's worded in a way that just, like, pushes our buttons, like, whoa.
And on the flip side, if you're someone who's out there writing the reviews, maybe this research is kind of a little nudge for all of us to be mindful of the power our words have.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to forget that there's another human on the other side of that screen reading those words.
Totally.
And like you said earlier, the way we express our, like, dissatisfaction, it can really have a bigger impact than we realize.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe instead of, like, firing off a scathing rant when an app doesn't meet our expectations, we take a breath and we ask ourselves, like, is there a way to provide this feedback constructively?
Right. Right.
Like, can I offer some helpful context, some suggestions for improvement?
It's like that old adage, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true?
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe we should all be running our online reviews through that filter before hitting post. Who knew we'd be getting an impromptu lesson in digital etiquette today?
Right. A little digital decorum, never hurt anyone. But in all seriousness, I think this research really highlights just how important it is to, like, approach online reviews, both as the people reading them and the people writing them with a critical eye, a discerning eye.
Yeah.
We need to remember that every review, no matter how passionately it's written, is just one perspective.
Yeah.
It's just one experience within this vast, vast sea of other opinions.
That's such a great point to end on. It's so easy to get swept up in the tide of online reviews, but at the end of the day, the power to make informed decisions, it lies with us. We need to trust our judgment, consider our own unique needs, and just remember that a single review, even a toxic one, doesn't tell the whole story.
Well said. I think that's our cue to maybe wrap up this deep dive.
Indeed. It's been such an eye-opening exploration into the world of online reviews. Thanks to you, I know I'll be approaching those star ratings with a whole new level of awareness from now on.
Always a pleasure to dive into these fascinating topics with you.
And to our listeners, a huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember to subscribe and, leave us a review, a kind and constructive one, of course. We'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration.